Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Tracy Williams. Tracy is a founder of Alaska Tracy, an executive life coach and business consulting business that guides you on your success journey. If you're overwhelmed, stuck, depressed, unsure how to create systems and models in business and in life to live a rich and fulfilled life, you found the solution. Tracy's journey is an incredible journey of recovery starting 22 years ago. Living a life filled with intention and sharing it with others is her purpose. Leading with intention allowed her to leave a six-figure income to pursue entrepreneurship in 2001. Working with hundreds of entrepreneurs to overcome their biggest obstacles of overwhelm, fear, unsure of what to do next, marketing, and not enough time, Tracy created a vision mapping framework with built-in steps to gain clarity, stay the course, and succeed beyond your wildest dreams. She is also a podcast host of Alaska Tracy podcast. Her experience and ideas have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs just like you to have tremendous breakthroughs in life beyond their wildest dreams. So please welcome to the show, Tracy Williams. Tracy, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's fun to be an interviewee.
Yeah, it's different. You know, if you're doing all the work all the time, it's a little bit different now.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking the time. Why don't we tell the audience how you got to where you are today?
Wow. In 3 minutes or less? So I'm currently in Anchorage, Alaska, and we're taping this in March. Yeah. And we have about another month and a half of winter up here. Yeah. And Bob is in Florida, and I was telling him before he hit record that I moved up here from Orlando, Florida 25 years ago, and began my recovery journey in 1998. So it's been a little over 23 years without alcohol, which I didn't really know that was the problem. I just thought everybody else was the problem. And so when I started tapping into living a life that was based on some spiritual principles, that was when I started to get into entrepreneurship back in 2001. And it has led me to where I am today at 55 years old, life and business coaching, as well as consulting. And I really believe that we all have the answers within us. Yeah. It's tapping into them and figuring out how to tap into them to lead a life that is really filled with richness. And it doesn't always mean money. I mean, money's helpful, but really filled up with joy from the inside.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point because, you know, everybody thinks, okay, success deals with money. Maybe not. But you've got to be grounded in who you are and the value you have. And I think that comes from God. He supplies us with the greatness we have within us, I believe. And what's interesting, you talk about that is the idea of, and even in your website, it mentions, in your bio, we mentioned it too, you help people overcome overwhelm, fear, and feeling stuck. Those are things we see today. If you watch any newscast, that's, 95% of what they shove at you and what we see in our society. How do you help people get through all that? Because it's everywhere.
Right. I really believe that I was guided to do the work that I do to help myself.
Yeah. No, how do you start?
Right. As a recovering alcoholic, I didn't know how to, I guess, not be selfish and always be thinking about me, which I still do, maybe just not as much. So just an example, yesterday I was feeling a little anxious and a little fearful. And because I practice these principles and now I teach them, right? So people are watching me. Yeah. I better be living them. Yeah. And so the practice has helped me to realize, oh, I'm anxious. I'm probably thinking a little too much about myself right now. So who can I call and ask how they're doing? And immediately one of the women that helped me early on in recovery popped up in my head, and she was doing a business in Russia. And
Wow.
she's been on my heart, a
Yeah.
lot. And so I called her and we talked for 2 hours, and it wasn't
Wow.
telling her about being anxious or fearful. It was, hey, how are you doing? I'm concerned about you.
Right.
And then sharing our lives. And when I got off the phone with her, the anxiety had subsided. And I think it's the hardest it is for me. I'm thinking it probably is for other people, that when we're in fear or in self, that's the hardest time to go for a walk, to pray, to reach out to others. And yet it's those actions that lead to faith and
Right.
dissipate the fear. And before recovery, I didn't know how to do that. So I just stay stuck, and then I'd
Wow.
start pointing the finger at other people. And I moved probably 30 times before I landed in Anchorage.
Wow.
From 18 to 30 years old, and
Wow.
just never comfortable in my
Right.
own skin. Yeah.
Wow. And it's such a, if you will, I won't say a paradigm shift, but I guess a shift for you personally. And when we start to think about that, and as I think about it, when you are focused on yourself, yeah, you can pick out all kinds of how we talk to ourselves. We can pick out all kinds of bad things. The skin doesn't look right. My hair doesn't look right. This doesn't fit right, blah, blah, blah. When you shift it to others, it is a total different aspect. And all that worry stuff it can be gone. It's you're understanding what they're going through, and you start to realize, maybe I got it. Oh, I've got it okay. So, yeah, that's a good way to help yourself as well as helping others. I mean, go out and ask somebody how they're doing, especially today. I just think that's so critical.
And for me, the hard part is, right? Not going into how I'm doing. Because really, we all want to talk about ourselves, really.
Yeah.
So when you're in that place of fear or whatever it is, to ask somebody else and to really, whether you're listening or not, be quiet and just ask them questions. Something happens. It's a beautiful thing. And in the beginning of my recovery, somebody said, call 3 women a day and ask them how they're doing and shut up. Yeah. And I was like, wow, and it was the hardest thing to do.
Right.
And what I've learned is really we all want people to ask us how we're doing. And so if you do that, and then somebody says, well, how are you? They care. They might want to know, but really it's easy to ask somebody else questions and be quiet. It's a great practice.
Yeah. And I was noticing as you're saying that and explaining that, your demeanor and your tone of your voice is very calming. Is that something you learned, or have you always been that way? Because it's soothing. I can see when you're asking somebody about that, how that would calm you down to calm others down.
That's so nice. Thank you. I practice a lot of meditation. Okay. And people that I work with are like, especially if they're Christian, they'll say, well, how does that fit in? Is it Christian based? And I'm like, it's like, for me, I believe in God, and I find God in nature. I find God listening to others, however you find God. And all the religions talk about being still.
Yes.
And listening. And so people that are Christian based and I teach them meditation, they're like, wow. So it's this power of sitting and listening.
Right.
Like being alone, right? Being like this morning, I was saying we were listening to, before you hit record, we've got Mr. Bill here on the dog bed, and my husband and I have started a practice of the St. Francis prayer. Okay. It's seek to be a channel of peace.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Right? It's a beautiful prayer. So in the morning we practice doing it, and he's been putting it on like a like we'll find a YouTube video or something and put it on a little, what are they called? A speaker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
we'll kind of just sit and be quiet, and we're being quiet. And then Chancey comes in with Mr. Bill, and she's speaking it. Oh no, and we're laughing. And so it's a practice, right? Like it's not a rigid practice of we must sit here and be, it's a practice.
Right.
And then it allows you, when you practice the being still, to be calm and to notice things around you. Like again, I was saying coyotes were running by the window, to notice things. The neighbor, he's a tree guy, and he's like, how do you see all this wildlife? I've never even seen a bear when we moved up here. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're in trees all the time. Well, I passed him one day and he's cutting his lawn with a headset on, and I'm like, of course you're not seeing them. You're like somewhere else, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because as you're talking about that idea of being calm and listening, originally I'm from Michigan, so I understand the winter thing, but go outside in the winter and walk through that snow, and all you hear, especially after a fresh snow, is that crunch of your feet, and then stop and literally and listen, because we'd be in northern Michigan, and you just listen and just hear that wind or nature, and that really settles you down and allows you to enjoy that perspective of everything.
Right. We're on a property and there's trails all around us, and this morning I did that. I walked in the woods, and and I listened, and of course I was listening for critters too, but it's just, I wondered if that's where you were from. I'm originally from Western New York. Okay. And I could detect some kind of an accent, and I'm like, where are you from?
I'm from the Midwest. Yeah. Well, and it's great that you actually explained my next question, which basically talking about prayer and meditation and how it improves your life. And you've already answered that. So, I mean, that's, you reading my notes?
I know.
So, you mentioned in some of your material and on your website about vision mapping, and we talked about it in your bio too, your vision mapping framework. Can you tell us about that? How does that help people to, I guess, get out of the overwhelm and the fear?
Yes. So it came to be back in 2001 when I started my very first business, which was, it's a funny story. I was in corporate America, a sales rep making a ton of money back then. Mm-hmm. And I started a mobile dog grooming business as a single girl.
Okay.
Refinanced the house that I had purchased, and people laughed and laughed. And then they hired me eventually.
Let them laugh as long as the check clears.
Right. And then, I had 3 vans running around town. But that first business, I went to a career counselor who said, I'm probably dyslexic at 32 years old. I had no idea. I thought I was stupid all my life.
Wow.
And he said, if you go back and you create a plan, and then you surround yourself with people that have your skills, have a skill set that you lack, you could do anything.
Right.
And so I came back to Anchorage. He was in Seattle, and I worked with somebody to create my first business plan.
Okay.
And I wish I still had that plan. I have no idea where it went, but it was one of the toughest things to do, to really sit down and to create a plan for the future,
right,
with actions to see where it could lead. And then it allowed the business to become.
Right.
And so throughout the years in business, working with people in marketing, and I was in real estate for a while, it became really clear to help people create a strategic plan, which became the vision mapping framework. Okay. And if you think of something as simple as, because people again will say, is that woo-woo? I don't believe in magic. And
right.
If you think of buying a car, I always use a blue Subaru. Let's say you're looking at a new car, it's a blue Subaru, and you start doing just a little bit of work, a little bit of research. And then one day you look around and it seems like everybody and their brothers driving that, right? Like, how did I not notice? Everybody's got a blue Subaru. Is it woo-woo? No, it's you're focusing on it And
Right.
so what we focus on expands.
Yeah.
And so this vision mapping framework is taking people to their visions, or even people that don't know what they're like. I have a couple women that I just talked to yesterday, and they're like, well, I'm not sure what my visions are. And I'm like, oh, this will work for you to really get clear and then create actions,
Right.
accountability, and measurability, so that when life happens, there's people in place to help you pivot.
Right.
And you can measure the success moving forward, or if you're moving backwards, how can you pivot to move forward?
Right. And it's interesting because I was talking to somebody on a podcast yesterday, and they mentioned the idea of sometimes when we're doing things like this, we need to put off the question that comes up now and push it off to later. And that big one is, like, is you probably ran into this trying to figure out a business. You're creating this business plan and figuring out these actions. And in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, can I really do this? How am I going to do this? Where's the money going to come from? Sometimes you got to put that off so you can focus on building that plan. Do you help people get through the fear and trepidation of those? Because those are common things that come up.
Yes. And that's where the coaching comes in. And I would kind of call myself a coach, but I always felt weird doing that. And then finally clients were like, why don't you just call yourself that? And so I went and got certified as a coach.
Right.
And so the coach totally different than the consulting. So the consulting is really guiding them, being the guide to them creating this plan, this intentional plan. The coaching is using questions to help you answer what you know is inside.
Right.
So it's not me saying, what do you think about blah, blah, blah. It's asking really specific questions so that you answer your own questions and you create the actions, and you can go, yeah, I'm not going to take all those actions.
Right.
Maybe I can let that vision go that I've been thinking of for 30 years because I don't want to do all that. Or that's all it's going to take.
Right.
Those 5, like, and that's what I get mostly. I'll get like, if I want to make that much a month, that I only have to have that many, like, why did I think it was so complicated?
Right.
And I tend to work with people that aren't looking to 10x and billion dollars, I tend to work with people that are like, I want to be fulfilled. I want to be enriched. I want to have joy. I want to live a full, wonderful, happy life.
Right.
Those are the people that I'm like, let's do this,
Well, and that's with that idea. Those are the things that will drive you, even if you don't think you can 10x, that will keep you going. So all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wait a second, I've tripled, quadrupled, 10x this business that I didn't think I could. But it's from here. It's from your heart and here. You can do the actions and you repeat it and you go after it.
Right. And being an entrepreneur, like I work with a lot of people that want to be or are entrepreneurs. Sometimes you have to do other things while you're growing. Like, it's not as simple as I think social media makes it look.
Right. Yeah. Social media shows you the top of the iceberg. It doesn't show you the other 90%.
Right. Right.
That's,
exactly.
Yes, that's I was thinking of that this afternoon as I was mowing the lawn, and the idea of, younger generations, they say, oh, they want to do this. Do you really want to do this? Because don't come in here with, a nice dressed, outfit on if you're going to be refurbishing something in a house and think you're, no, that doesn't work that way. You're not here for a fashion statement. You're here to do work. Let's get it done. You're going to get your hands dirty. It's going to hurt. You better be prepared for what it takes. And I think sometimes
right now there's so many things that the United States, I'm just going to say that I know you have listeners all over, but there's so many opportunities within the United States maybe not something that somebody's ever thought of, like coaching or fitness coach or whatever, but there are so many needs.
Yes.
So maybe look at what can I provide that people really need right now. And maybe down the road, I'll be a coach or what, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a good point, is look at what's now, because that's where you can get your iron, get your fire started and get it going.
right.
So,
Right. Lots of opportunities right now for people that want to work.
yeah.
Get their hands dirty.
Yeah. That's the other piece. They do need to want to work. So, yeah. Well, with that vision mapping idea, how do people keep that going? Do you have them do practices? What do you do for that?
Well, I was doing a membership, a women's membership, and I've sort of let that go. I encourage, when I'm talking to people, like the two women I talked to yesterday about vision mapping, I emphasize that it is really the percentage of it, of them following through, is either hiring myself as a coach or finding an accountability group or another coach. Because once you create this wonderful, beautiful plan, who's going to help you when the you know what hits the fan?
And it will.
Well,
yes. We've lived long enough that we know this. Yeah,
right. And so that's the piece that's really important, is that accountability piece, to help you, somebody that's not like people say, oh, my husband, or I'm like, somebody outside of your house.
Yeah, because they're going to tell you the reality of it.
Right. The truth.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt your feelings.
Right. Exactly. I think a loved one may pamper it, if you will, a little bit, or keep it soft. Because they don't want to get an argument if they just say it straight out. But, that's a great point you talk about there, because that, discussing goals and accountability, writing it down, some great, just those pieces alone, that's critical.
Right. And then somebody to say, well, have you done X, Y, Z?
Right.
Well, yeah, I have. And this hasn't. Okay, well, what have you done? Like, let's really talk about it. And chances are there's something missing that that person outside can help you to see. Right. And like I said, it doesn't have to be me, but I really emphasize you've got to have somebody lined up after you do this.
Right.
If you want to see results.
And that's a key piece, I think, to what you're saying here, because no matter what we do, it's nice to have that person that you can pick up the phone and call and say, and this isn't not at 3 a.m. when you get this idea in your head, but normal hours, if you would, but what about this? Am I looking at this right? Because there could be a perspective you don't see, or you do see that they didn't, it's great to have that communication from an outside party.
Right, right.
You mentioned a vision mapping journal too.
Hey, look.
Yeah, how about that? That wasn't placed there. There you go. Wow. That's a good, nice and looking journal too. Wow.
And so that's not me on the front. My husband, who is very honest with me, he's a finance guy. He's like, I'm
glad by the numbers.
He's like, I'm glad you didn't put yourself walking on water. That's my girlfriend's daughter walking on water, walking on the beach in Homer, 4 hours south of Anchorage, Alaska.
Wow.
And so it's a journal that really guides you. I've written mine.
Yeah.
Lots of doodles and guides you to meditation.
Okay.
And kind of walking through creating a vision map.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. It's a nice looking book. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
People can find it on Amazon or on my website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get to that.
And I do give them away in my workshops too.
Hey, there you go. Yeah. Workshop. I figured you would with the workshop. That helps them be interactive, helps them to get the process started. Like you said, I think writing is such a critical piece because it helps you learn. You're writing it, taking action kinesthetically. You're probably saying it while you're writing it, even though it might be inside your head. You're hearing yourself say it. So you got learning, auditory, 3 ways of learning right off the bat when you do that. And that helps solidify it. Then you can always go back to it and say, oh yeah, I need to do that.
Yes.
A lot of good coaches talk about that, some of the big ones. So it's a proven system. Write it down. It will help.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's great that's there for people to be able to get, because I think, that helps to prove that scenario, helps to ingrain it into what they do.
Yes.
What else do you think, what's the mindset that most people come to you? I mean, are they leery of coaching? Are they not? Are they positive about it? How does a positive attitude help them, or does it help them grow in what you show them?
I'm thinking of, I had a couple come to me, and it was a husband wife, and the wife said, my husband's looking for a spiritual coach. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's have a conversation. And he put her on speaker. And I was like, okay, is this for you, or is it for both of you? Or long story short, they ended up hiring me for doing their vision map. And they're looking at retiring in 5 years. And so they did a 6-month plan to start the retirement process.
Right.
And so we spent all day and we talked about relationship stuff. We talked about tasks, who's going to do what. It was really, I mean, we were all exhausted after, and they're really thrilled. They've got an idea of a direction that they're headed and what they need to do to get it started to make it real.
Right.
And so most of the people I talk to are open-minded. Their girl yesterday is leaving a business of a career of 26 years.
Okay.
She was like, I have no clue what's next. This sounds perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an open mind.
Yeah.
Although most of them like to know, well, wait, what's going to happen? How is it this vision mapping going to work? Like, they want to know. And I'm like, I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah.
Come with an open mind,
Right. Interesting, because that's it. That brings into your faith. I think, I think of the story when Peter stepped out of the boat towards Jesus, and it's like, oh, you have little faith. And when he started doubting, that's when he sunk, and that's, similar to what you do. It's you explained it, the benefits of it. Now it's up to you to actually take those steps, believe in the process, and go for that. So
right.
Interesting. That is great. And of course, your journal with the girl walking on the water ties right into that story. It's like, wow, okay.
Isn't that my husband? The first thing he says, I'm glad it's not you walking. You're so funny. And then I tell people, they're like, I thought it was you. I'm like, no. The one story, like, I love to tell a whole bunch of stories, but the recent one is I'm just going to show you. I have this picture that we got. A lot of Alaskans go to Hawaii, and we got this. It's a piece of
close
art.
for you.
Right. We got this piece of art in Kona several years ago.
Okay.
So it's whales. There's a volcano, and so it was probably 3 years ago when we got it. And I started looking at properties just all over Florida. My brothers live in Florida.
Okay.
Alaska, Washington, like all over. And this sits right behind my screen. So I look at it throughout the day, whether I'm looking at it or not, it's there. Long story short, and total faith, actions, God, totally. Last year, we bought a place on the ocean in Manzanillo where we spent our honeymoon 16 and a half years ago. Wow. With whales right in front of us.
Wow.
No plans to go to, like, Mexico. I didn't even have it on the radar.
Wow.
It was a series of non-coincidences.
Huh.
And it was the second or third time I was there last year. And I was like, oh my God, there is a volcano here. Of course there is. There's a volcano.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
how, like, I mean, talk about woo. That's how, like, the God of my understanding
Yeah.
wants me to be happy,
Right.
wants me to be able to give to others. Like, how can this condo help others? My parents just came and we spent a wonderful week with them. Like,
Right.
how can everything you want for yourself, how can that help others?
Right.
Because we can put money, right? We can put things and we can get them. But if we're not intentionally like, how can this serve others?
Yeah.
It might be miserable.
Right. You have to let that flow. Money
Right.
is a tool. It's not a thing that you accumulate, because when we're gone, you can't take any of it with you. So let the process flow. Let it,
Right.
help those. If you want to help people, great. Put a roof on your prayer place or your synagogue or your church, whatever it may be. Help fund that. It's great. Help a homeless shelter, do whatever. Help your kids out if that's what is needed. Having that ability to be able to do that is a blessing. So, that's a great story there, because now I get, it's like, wow, how that all, God makes that all come together is really something.
And it's like you said earlier, it's like not there isn't pain involved, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
but how we choose to look at things and walk through things and really believe that God wants us to be joyous so that we can be like on my vision map. So this, I'll just show you, like, as ripple of change.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So, like, am I being the ripple of change, or am I being, look at the world events?
Right, right. Exactly. Yeah. But even on you mentioned ripples. Look at your journal again. On your journal, what's on the front page? How about that? Ripples, yeah. Wow. That's cool. That's really cool.
It's wild.
God works in mysterious ways. That is something.
And I don't think there's a time that there are, but I mean, for the most part, it's like that we're all, like, if you're in your car,
Yeah.
like, how are we able to be driving these machines on the roads without, like, that's a miracle, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's something. Yeah. Wow. Well, Tracy, tell us where people can find out more about you, your website, your podcast. Tell us more about that, so they make sure they can get a hold of you and find out more about what you're doing. This is great.
perfect. Thank you for the opportunity again. alaskatracy.com, and that's TRACY. And that has my offerings, as well as how you can track me down, or Google Alaska Tracy. And I'm on all the social media platforms. And I do share a lot of Alaska and now Manzanillo, Mexico, because I'm outside a lot, I walk a lot, and just the beauty. And I think it's really important to share that, the beauty that is all around us, everywhere, wherever we are, right?
And having that opportunity to be able to do that is gracious. So thank you for doing that, because it's we need that in our world. We need to share that beauty that's all around us. So many times people are running 900 miles an hour, not looking up. And even in Florida here, we have beautiful beaches, beautiful sunsets. This morning, my wife and I took the day off, so my wife and I went over and had breakfast on the beach. What a great way to start the day. It's
nice.
Take a few minutes and just go outside. Even if your day's crazy, step away, walk outside, look up at the blue sky, take a minute and just enjoy something. So well, Tracy, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate our time and what you've offered, and the insights into the visions and the visionary mapping. I mean, good stuff. I mean, you gave live examples there, people. What else how much better can it get? So thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Thank you again. So you have a great day.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.